Hi. Today I wanted to make a hopefully quick video on a sequencing technique that you can try on your Elektron boxes. I'm using the Digitone today, but this should work on the Digitakt, Octatrack, etc. And that is on phasing or phase music, which is a technique where you have often a single melody line played by multiple instruments. Or recordings on tape. And those two tracks slowly go out of phase as perhaps if it's on tape, the tape speed of one tape goes slightly faster than the other one. Or if the musicians playing the music live slowly start playing their instruments at different speeds, but playing the same melodies. This was a technique popularized in the 1960s by Terry Riley and Steve Reich. It's used a lot in ambient music. It's used a lot in sort of Berlin school sequencer music. Tangerine Dream used this a lot. It's a technique that you can try on almost any sequencer system. And it's a technique that you can try on your Elektron boxes, and you can try it in your DAW. Today we're just going to be focusing on the box. So I have a project set up here on the Digitone where we have a few instruments already configured. This first track sounds like this. And our second track sounds like this. And we're going to use these two tracks to try phasing our sequences. These other two tracks are pre-programmed with some drums, which we'll bring in later on. So, getting started. Now on this first track, we're going to create a sequence with 16 steps, and I'm going to enter those with a step sequencer. Holding down the function key, we get this keyboard. So we can just enter some notes. Let's see how that sounds. So here's our sequence. It's 8 notes over 16 steps, playing in 16ths. Now, we can copy this over to our other track. We just hit Function and Copy, and that copies the track. Now we go down to our other voice, and we can just paste that in. And if we unmute that and play them together, they'll sound like this. They're playing in time, and they're playing the same sequence. Now, to introduce some phasing effects, we will go into the Page menu. And by default, every track is set to 16 steps out of 16 at a playback rate of 1x. And if we change any settings here, that'll affect all 4 tracks. But if we press Function Yes, that changes these settings to per pattern. Now, I can adjust the length of this track, and it will in turn cause the track to be either play slightly longer or it'll play slightly shorter. So let's try playing it slightly shorter. And I'm not going to adjust these other settings just yet. We'll take a listen at what this sounds like. And if I leave this page now and I press play, now, did you hear that? If I mute the first track, our first step here is playing twice. But we selected only 15 steps. What's going on there? Well, if we go back into the page, we'll see that the master length of this pattern is 16 steps. And when it's set to 16, it'll enforce every track to play back a full 16 steps, which can also create some interesting sequences. Say if we turn this down to like 13 steps and try playing it. time it played up to step 13 and looped back to step 1, but then continued to step 3 and then looped back to step 1 again. So that's enforcing the pattern length of 16 there. And that means that every track, that when it loops back around, will always restart on the 1. So if the track 1 is playing, just 16 steps, everything would reset back to track 1, which currently isn't what we want. So what we do want instead is to change our master length to infinite. Now I'm holding function and turning the dial left. I can just also do it this way. And now when it's set to infinite, the track will just play the 13 steps and we'll just keep going. So if we play it now, it's not resetting at any point. It's just going from step 13 over to step 1 and continuing on. And with this setup, our tracks will now go out of phase with each other. So if I set this to 15 steps and we go back to track 1, that's still set to 16 and our master length is set to infinite. So now when we hit play and we unmute track 1, for the first bar, the sequences will line up, but for subsequent bars, they'll start phasing with each other. So let's see how that sounds. There we go, and now we have a phasing effect on our sequences, where we have the same sequence playing, but they're played by different voices, and they're looping at different rates. So what happens if we change our length to something longer, like 17 steps? Now, one thing we do need to check here is to make sure that when we go to our sequencer, we go to step 1. By default, the Elektron sequencers will copy the previous pages over to the next one as you add more pages to the sequence. And we don't want that here, so we'll just turn off that extra step. And now we can press play. And now track 3 here is phasing in a different direction, because its track is slightly longer. It's going to get more and more behind as track 1 plays. And I think this sounds a lot better with a little bit of effects going, so let's dial in some delay and reverb. And we could add some drums too. Now our kick here is just a standard 4 on the floor with an extra kick playing every 2 bars. Now right now these sequences are very heavily layered on top of each other, so it can be nice to just reduce the probabilities a little bit across the entire sequence. And now they'll slowly phase over each other. And it sounds quite nice. I have one more instrument over here, which is just a hi-hat. And that's also configured to play less than a bar. I have some step sensors here in a triplet style rhythm. And if you look at the page setting, that's only playing 13 out of the 16 steps. It also has a reduced probability. we go. We have a phasing effect. Pretty simple. And both our melodies are playing the exact same notes, just at slightly different rates. I should point out that when we have the master length set to infinite here, and we were to attempt to change our pattern, say we're going to have a second part to this song, the Digitone wouldn't know when to end that pattern and start the next one. And we can help the sequencer out a little bit. We can add some steps to the channel length. And if we just increase that to 16. So now if we press play, I don't really have any other sequences, patterns set up here, but if we were to hit play, we're still playing with our phased sequences, but if I were to press pattern and go to a different one, we switched as soon as the sequence hit the 16 mark. And just to show you what happens if we don't have that set, we set that to off and go to pattern. And we see here that the Digitone is waiting for a point where it can safely switch patterns, but since we're set to infinite, it won't change. There we go, and now it changed because we changed the channel length setting. There we go. That's all I've got. So I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.